part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
45-50, 45-40, run, William, run! He's got blockers in front, 5, touchdown! Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score! Kick block! They block the kick!
All right, welcome into the Orange is Oranger Cleveland Browns podcast. I'm Holly Wetzel. He is Tyvis Powell and Taj, our infamous producer. Guys, we're back. It's been a while. How are you? How's life? What's going on?
You know what I'm trying to figure out, is Taj in a different room now?
Taj is in a different room than he normally is, or they painted.
Man, it must be the Orange is Oranger must pay really well.
We have two offices. This is office number 2.
Ooh.
Look at that. They pay
Emily's
so well
office.
that you got 2 offices, man. My check must have got lost in the mail.
Yeah, that makes 2 of us. Well, Taj, thank you for showing us your second office. Well, guys, it's exciting to be back, and we're just going 2 for 2. We got another legend this week. Another legend. His name is synonymous with the Cleveland Browns. Okay. He started reporting on the Browns, not to date this wonderful man. I think the year I was born, 1984.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Crazy.
10 years before me.
Oh God.
Yeah, it makes us feel even older. He is the Browns analyst for ESPN Cleveland, my fellow teammate. He's a published author and one of 48 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Selection Committee. He's the general, ladies and gentlemen. He needs no introduction, but Mr. Tony Grossi, welcome. First time into the Orange is Oranger.
Thank you, Holly and Tyvis. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure. I love doing these things, especially with people I know.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because when I have been wanting Tony to ask you to come on here, and I'm like, there's no way he's gonna come on. Like he is so far like beyond my reach. I get to see him in the office, and we chat about all kinds of things, and you always give me good advice, and you make me laugh, and all kinds of stuff. And so I'm like, I'm just gonna ask him. I'm gonna see. And you looked at me, and you're like, first of all, you said you have a podcast. And you go, of course I
will. Listen, you should never feel that way. I was amazed that you thought had those thoughts. I mean, it's no inconvenience. It's a pleasure, really. It's a pleasure. I love talking to you in the office, and Tyvis I've talked to in the post-game show during Brown season, and or pregame, postgame, I don't know, whichever. Pregame, I think. But I listen to you. I listen to you driving home from the home games, because you guys do local. You do the network. Wait a minute. You do the network postgame show. We at KNR do our own postgame show. So after I'm done with ours, I usually drive home and listen to you. And
are you taking callers as well?
No, well, when I'm on, they just talk to me. I think
He's made it to that level, Tyvis. You're taking calls. Tony is the call.
Tony, I enjoy listening to the fans. I gotta help them get through it. I gotta get them the next week.
Yeah, I agree. It's like therapy. They need someone to talk them off the ledge, like 10 times a year.
And you've done that a lot over the many years you've been covering this team.
I need someone to talk me off the ledge at this point.
I'm surprised you're still on the ledge.
That's close. Listen, I've fallen off before, trust me, in my career. I've had about 3 trips over the ledge.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm sure that you've come definitely close to falling off that edge many times. But I think what also I wanted to do having you on, of course, we're going to talk about the Browns and the season coming up and highs and lows and all that stuff. But I think too, though, Tony, I would say for sure for me, getting to know you has been quite the pleasure, I should say. And you have such a really funny, quirky type of attitude and sense of humor. And I think that side is not able to be seen a lot with what you do, especially when it comes to covering a team like the Browns. So with that being said, with the Browns, what has been the most difficult thing when it comes to covering a team like the Browns that's different than any other team in the NFL?
Well, it's definitely different than any team in Cleveland. That's for sure.
Yeah.
The Guardians have success. The Cavs are now having success. They had success with LeBron. The Browns don't have a lot of success in my career. It started out great. My first 5 years on the beat while I was with the Plain Dealer, the Browns went to the playoffs every year, and starting with my second year on the beat, 1985. That's the beginning of the Kosar era. And they went to the playoffs 5 years in a row. AFC Central champions 4 of those 5 years. I thought this is the greatest beat in the history of journalism and sports page and sports writing. I never thought there would be such a drought as what has now transpired. And the worst thing about that, and I think Tyvis knows what I'm talking about here. Every loss, I don't even want to go in the locker room and ask these guys what happened. It's like a morgue, and that's just one loss. Imagine 15 in a row, or 16 in a row. It's like, what are we doing? This is ridiculous. So that's the worst thing about the recent history of the Browns. I want to go in there and ask fun questions and hear players laughing and giggling and giving me great quotes. And when you cover loss after loss after loss, it's like you don't want to hammer these guys and say, why did you fumble and why didn't you do this and that? It's like, let's get out of this locker room. I'll write what I saw and be done with it.
So as you've been reporting for the Browns and doing all these stories, have you had a favorite moment with the Cleveland Browns? I know it's hard. I know it's been rough, but have you had a moment where you was like, you know what, man, this is what it's all about?
Well, yeah, and they're all early in my career. And the fact is, I remember games in the 80s a lot better than I remember games last year, because they were such good times and fun times. That those 80s seasons, starting with Bernie in 85 and all that, those were tremendous games. And the characters on those teams were just, they lived year round in Cleveland. That doesn't happen too often anymore. That's one of the changes in players, at least in Cleveland, in the last 30 years, is players were here year round, and they were part of the community year round, and they were heroes because they won, and they were so much fun to cover. They're still, the Browns alums, and we know who we're talking about, Hanford and those guys, and Kevin Mack. They're still around. Those were good, fun times. So all those years were fabulous. Even though every one of them ended in heartbreak, but when you look back on it, those years, I remember, like, the highlights of my career were in those years.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that, as you mentioned, the first four years of your career were fantastic and exciting, and that's, and then it's just been a downfall since? What is it about our picker? Why can't we get it right? And I know that's the $1 million question, right? It's something that we talk to death about and think maybe next year. Mm-hmm. But why? Like, what is it about this team that we can't? I mean, Tyvis has even said that some players have said, Tyvis, that the players come here to die, right? Their careers come here to die. I mean, that's why I want to come to Cleveland. I mean, what is it?
No, it was one of those things where they they would say, okay, so my story is that when I played, obviously I was a huge Cleveland Browns fan. And when I would go to these different teams, because Tony, I played for like 8 different teams. So when I would go to these teams, I would ask players, what would happen if you went to the Cleveland Browns? And the common answer would be, so what you would do is, when you get traded, you got to take a physical when you first get there. And if you failed a physical, the trade is void. So they were saying they would fake an injury on purpose to get traded back. That's some of the stories that I used.
What era is this? What year?
This was the 0-16 around that time.
Oh, I would have done the same thing. Yeah. Well, Holly, in answer to your question, there have been different eras in my career, and this expansion era from 1999 on has been a real. I call it the 100 Years' War. I mean, it's like hopelessness. 3 winning seasons, right, in 21 years. I think that's what it is. And I don't care what anybody says. Everything starts from the top in ownership. And when the Browns were good, Art Modell was in his heyday as owner of the Browns. He seemed to have the Midas touch. Everything was going well. Then we had that break of the team leaving to Baltimore. And then when they came back, Mr. Al Lerner was the owner, and you couldn't ask for a better owner. And then within 2 years, he's sick with brain cancer. And from that point on is where we've had our struggles. I've always maintained if Mr. Lerner had not passed away prematurely, things would have been a lot different. Hey, they made the playoffs in their 4th year of existence as an expansion team. That's pretty darn good in the history of the NFL. So they were on their way, and then he passed away, and everything changed.
Over your years doing this, obviously we've had a bunch of coaching changes. Is there any coach that was let go that you felt like, that was a terrible move?
Well, I thought, listen, most of the coaches they've let go have not gone on to be coaches elsewhere, right? So I can't say that, but I thought there were premature firings for sure. I mean, to fire a guy after 1 year, Rob Chudzinski, when he was the coach, the Joe Banner, it was the first year of the Haslam ownership. They fired him after 1 year. And they had said to him during the course of the year, they traded Trent Richardson that year. Remember, their number 1 pick the year before? Traded him in the second or third week of the season. And he's like, what are you doing? And they said, don't worry, you're fine. Just carry on. And they go like 4-12, understandably, and they fired him. And then it's not the firings that I think have been the problem. It's been the hirings that have been the problem.
And then the panicking. There's just a lot of panicking going on that, you think you need a clean slate.
And that's why I think, even though this current regime has had 2 losing seasons in a row and not made the playoffs 2 years in a row, and I criticize them for whatnot, I'm fine with just letting it play out. These are young guys in charge right now. They're still learning, Barry and Stefanski, and they're not awful. I mean, they haven't won the last 2 years, but the record is still better than what we've seen in the past. I hope the ownership has learned to play it out a little longer.
Speaking of a lot of the turnover and the hiring and firing of coaches, and we had Mary Kay Cabin on last month or the month before, and we were talking to her about sources and building up those type of relationships, especially over the years in the building, but how difficult she said it is because, she's not able to have a 10-year relationship with Bill Belichick, right? Like to be able to build that up. Can you talk to us about what your process has been to get sources that have been able to be reliable for you over all these years?
Well, that's changed in the different phases of my career too. Now I'm in the phase of, not a beat writer. I don't have to rely on everything they say. I want to. I have my sources and all that, but I'm more of an opinion maker and an analyst now. And that gives me a little leeway to just write what I see and what I hear and what I know and try to find out more inside of that. So I'm not as dependent on that. But I must say in the Haslam ownership, I mean, there are obstacles in the way of creating relationships. I can't pick up the phone and call Andrew Barry. I can't pick up the phone and call Kevin Stefanski. I can't. Got to go through PR. When I first started, and for the longest time, these coaches and people would call me at home. I mean, you had that kind of access and that kind of relationship, and that hasn't existed in a long time, and that makes it difficult. You can't foster relationships anymore. It just doesn't seem. These are nice guys, Stefanski and Andrew Berry, and yet I've never had more than 20 minutes alone with either of them in 4 years. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if that's an organizational philosophy or what, but it just seems like those kind of relationships you can't have anymore.
Is that like that with the other teams?
Other teams?
Yeah.
With a lot of them, it is, but with some of them, it's still like old school where you do have those relationships, and it's not personal because again, I have nothing against. I don't think those guys have anything against me. I really don't. But it's just that the system they set up is such that you have to go through so many hoops to contact someone. It's ridiculous. I mean, we're all adults here, and it shouldn't be that hard.
I thought he was going on a whole PR tour.
Who?
Wasn't he? Stefanski? Wasn't he like going out and doing?
Yeah, they do that at the end of each year. He'll go to our station. He'll go to 92.3. He'll do some national interviews.
It's pretty siloed though. Like he was pretty much in and out. I think I got a video of him like walking by, checking out all the cool photos in our office.
The day when Stefanski was hired, and it was just before COVID hit. So COVID had a lot to do with the way things changed. But he had one-on-one interviews off the record with all the regular people, me and Mary Kay and everybody. And they were like 15 minutes and boom, you're out of there, And you should do more of that during this time of year and during the off season to establish relationships, and it's just not done anymore. So it's a shame because we're all people, we're all doing our jobs, and it shouldn't be confrontational, and it's really not, but it's still not like it should be.
And when you're trying to, more so maybe, your role has changed, like you had mentioned about you being more of an analyst now and more of an observation of and writing about that versus actually reporting and getting sources and breaking news. But when you hear a lot of rumors, I can only imagine the amount of rumors you hear. How do you kind of decipher what is worth pursuing versus something that's, completely and totally out of whack? And has there been something that you were like, that is so not true, and then you end up finding out that you're like, oh my God, that actually was true, that you didn't?
The draft of Baker was a perfect example. I just did not believe that. But a little story about that at the time. John Dorsey was the GM, and two different people who I trust immensely in the NFL. They don't work for the Browns, but they're clued in, and they're NFL people. They're not media. Told me he was definitely taking Josh Allen. And they said, it's Josh Allen. And then when I started, leaning that way in the stuff I'd write and talk about, all of a sudden I got some anonymous texts from numbers. I didn't know who was texting me, but they had my number. And they're like, yeah, you're right on. They're misleading me. Purposely misleading me. And of course they picked Baker, and that kind of came out like a day or two before the draft. It's looking like Baker. And I'm like, there's no way. I keep getting texts. I keep getting these people I trust. And it turns out there were other reporters, Cleveland local reporters, who were receiving similar texts to take them off the scent of Baker Mayfield. So, I learned over the years, don't trust anyone. There's very few people anymore. Very few. And you have to work with your own instincts, and you try to figure out what the way they do things and put yourself in their place. Well, and that's the best I could do. And, if there's a wild rumor, Holly, there's always a PR VP to call and say, hey, listen, this is getting out of hand. Tell me, and that anonymous source will say absolutely untrue, and you'll leave it alone. So you could, he's appointed by the club to be the spokesman to keep things from getting crazy.
So, Tony, when you've seen the moves that they've made this offseason, how did you feel about it? With obviously letting Joe Woods walk, letting the special teams coordinator walk. What was your thoughts behind that?
Well, I like Joe, and I was rooting for him, but it was unavoidable. I thought all along, halfway through the season, second week of the season, he was getting heat. I thought Kevin Stefanski all along was going to give him every chance to rectify what was going wrong. He didn't want to fire him. It became unavoidable. And I love the fact, as long as they made the move, Jim Schwartz was my number one guy, and I thought that was a great move. It was odd the way they waited so long to make the move on Mike Prefer, the special teams coordinator. But Bubba Frantrone's a fantastic young new coach, and that was a good move. So I love both of those moves. And in fact, I said on our air, Holly, at the time, for both of them, they're the two most important new faces in the building, and that was before they started acquiring players. And I really believe that. So I like that. Then they went into free agency, and I got to be honest, I don't think they got Jim Schwartz the horses he needs up front in free agency. I know they threw a lot of money at guys and acquired about 4 or 5 defensive linemen. I just don't see it. I think they're still lacking there. But I think Andrew Berry rallied at the end with those receivers, and I like a lot the way it finished. But I'm very skeptical that they gave Schwartz enough help up front to transform this defense.
Well, that's Tyvis' sweet spot there. That defense.
Yeah.
Do you like what you see, Tyvis?
Like I said, they didn't get the splashy big name, defensive tackle that they need. I think they got a bunch of guys that are productive. They come in and they can get the job done. By any means, I don't think they're game changers. Yeah. But I think with Myles Garrett, if Myles Garrett plays to his full potential, I think he allows people to get free. So, if you're on another defensive line and you don't have a Myles Garrett, a guy who's getting triple teamed, there's double teams you got to take on. There's certain blocking schemes that you got to take on. I think the Myles Garrett is the key to this whole thing that can allow a Dalvin Tomlinson to be better on the stat sheet than what he was, or let 007 be better than what he was, at the end of the Texans season last year. So I think because of Myles Garrett is going to allow them to look good, in my personal opinion.
007. That's a good nickname for him. Is he wearing number 7 or something?
I don't know. I think I don't know if linemen can wear single digits.
Oh yeah, they can now.
They can now, yeah.
Oh, they can. No, he better.
No,
right?
Linemen can't, but linebackers can. And he came into the league as a linebacker, so he might.
He better lie.
Is that a big deal? You think, Grossi? I mean, with that, some people seem to be really up in arms about the numbers, the single digit numbers on these guys.
Well,
it's a big deal.
Why? I'm honest. Why?
Holly, the number matters. Okay, I'm gonna let you listen. As a former athlete, the number that you wear matters.
What was your number?
Your
favorite number. Your favorite number.
Oh, 23 was my number in college.
Because of Deion.
No. Deion was 21. I couldn't. Deion was 21. 23, man, because 23 looked good in any sport. It was really, No. See, so let me tell you, Tony, I'm glad you brought him up because, I found out when we won the Natty that LeBron was a Tyvis Powell fan. I had no idea. Wow. He showed up to the national championship game wearing a 23 jersey. I was like,
wow.
The things we tell ourselves. Yeah, totally.
Holly, why? He was number 6. He was in Miami at the time. He was wearing number 6. Why else would he wear 23?
Yeah, good.
Come on now.
But,
He knew who it was.
I'm a old fart traditionalist, and so I'm uncomfortable with the weird numbers now. You know, like Anthony Walker was wearing number 4, then he gave it to Watson and wore number 5. It just looks odd for a linebacker. Whoever wears 0. And
I'm not a fan of that one, Tony.
No.
I'm not.
Well,
wait, let me in the secondary. In the secondary, I don't like 0.
007 should wear 0, right? He's got the dibs on it.
He could wear that.
Odell Beckham should wear 0. But
no, he went back to number 3.
I like, you know, I'm used to linemen wearing 90s and linebackers wearing 50s and receivers wearing 80s. So I think a single digit is a look at me number. You know, look at me, I'm number 1, I'm number 7. So that's what.
Well, switching to the offense side of the ball, I think it just came out the Browns were ranked number 7 on the offensive core coming up for 2023. So good news for that. Obviously puts more pressure on the defense this year, but with the offense, I want to talk a little bit about Deshaun, obviously. You know, this is obviously a huge make or break year. Tony, is there a bigger concern that you don't think has been really talked about when it comes to him? You know, we've talked ad nauseum about his play for the 6 games and how he's going to be. Will he be good as we hope he is? Was it the right move? Is there something else that maybe you feel like Browns fans aren't taking into consideration that you think is a bigger concern?
You know, I didn't like what I saw. I know it's understandable in 6 games. I really thought that Pittsburgh game at the end left a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, the great weather day. It was not a harsh weather. Everyone on the Browns offense was healthy, which is amazing for the 17th game of a season. Everybody was healthy. He had played 5 games at that point, and I expected to see a win, quite honestly. And I just hated the way the season ended. So I'm a little skeptical, but my friend in Houston, John McClain, who covered Deshaun, you know, from the very beginning in Houston, says he's never going to put up the numbers here that he put up in Houston simply because of the weather. He's not going to. Now, that doesn't mean he can't win. I'm just saying for fantasy leaguers out there, don't expect to see Watson go for 4,000 yards and lead the league in passing. It's not going to happen. It's not. It's a different league up here from the AFC South in a dome. But I thought it was great that he got exposed to about 3 or 4 or 5 games, three games for sure in the weather, and he did better than I thought. You know, that coldest day ever. What was that? Was that Christmas Eve or was it the?
It was Christmas Eve, I think.
Yeah,
the Saints game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Baltimore game also before that was I thought he did okay. It was his receivers who couldn't hold on to the ball. But I was surprised that he did as well as he did, and that was encouraging to me. But I'm hopeful he returns to form. Let's face it, if he's playing well next year, it's going to be so much fun to talk about and write about and stuff. So I'm hoping for that.
Are you a fan of? So now that they got Deshaun Watson and they got him these weapons, you know, where does that leave Nick Chubb? Do they become more of a passing team, or do you continue to ride Nick Chubb to open things up for Deshaun? How do you think they should approach the start of next season?
Yeah, that's the big mystery. I think Stefanski's MO is to throw the ball a lot to get a lead, and then, you know, do the Jimmy Johnson thing and bang Emmitt Smith in the second half. I think if he could write up a formula every week, that's what he would do. A lot of throwing in the first half, get the 2-score lead, and then just, you know, unleash Chubb on him. I'm a little worried because I'm a big, like everyone else, big Chubb fan. I think his carries are going to be reduced unless they get big leads in the first half, and he just, you know, runs the ball in the second half like he did in 2020 when Baker was thrown 7 or 8 times a game in the second half. That's it. And they were winning. That's a pretty good formula, but I can't always rely on that. So I think they're going to throw the ball a lot. That's why they traded for Elijah Moore and signed Goodwin. And I don't know what the final product's going to look like, but I think a lot of throwing first half. He'll probably throw the ball 20 times the first half and 12 the second half, and Chubb's carries will be more in the second half than the first half.
So they're not going to have the Nick Chubb. The Browns are undefeated when Nick Chubb carries the ball 20 times. That won't be a stat.
Listen, Tyvis, I don't think we're going to see him carry 20 times very many times in
Really?
unless they're up 17-3 at halftime.
Tony, what gets me about that is I think you could go in the game with a game plan, but I think once you get in the game, things change. You got to ride with what's working for you. And I think that was one of the things that had me kind of frustrated with Stefanski. If Chubb is what's winning you the game and what's getting you yards, you got to roll with it until they beat it. I mean, Atlanta did it to us, and you see what happened. The Chargers came in. They was worse than the league in rushing, but they started running the ball and found some success, and that's how they won the game. I think you just got to roll with what's winning for you, and that's the one thing that's my one knock on Stefanski. Like,
how about the Saints? The Saints did the same thing.
Oh,
Wildcat.
Yeah.
The Saints, I think that was the coldest game.
The Saints. Yeah.
New Orleans game. And yeah, they just schooled the Browns and did what the Browns should be doing. And then we go to Pittsburgh in the last game, and since it's a beautiful 45-degree day, Chubb touched the ball 12 times. In a close game. It was close for 3 quarters. He touched the ball 12 times.
Jeez.
You know what, though? You know why? I think I know why they do that, though, because I think they're worried about the extending Chubb's career. When you see guys like Derrick Henry, you see the Ezekiel Elliott's, these guys got their coattail roll. They was getting the ball 30 times a game, and now you see them the wear and tear finally hitting. I think their strategy is to keep it under 20, because that way it takes hits off his body. And now instead of having him in his prime for 4 years, we may be extended to 6 years. I think that's the whole thing behind why he don't touch the ball like that.
I agree with you, and I'm going to make a point now that's my biggest problem with the Browns. Winning should be number one.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was like.
Whatever you have to do whatever you have to do. Worry about year 6 and year 6. Yeah, I'm being honest. 100%. I don't think Stefanski he's ever sold out to win a game. He's never said, I grew up in the Marty Schottenheimer era where he would hit 2,000-yard rushers, Biner and Mack. It's the only way they could win a game. Screw it. You don't like it? Too bad. We won 17. You can't win a game 17-30. But Marty would do whatever he had to do that day to win a game. I don't think Stefanski does that. And there's always like that excuse. Well, we want Chubb, in 2024 to be able to be fresh. Screw that. Just win the game.
Yeah. And so the next question then, Tony. That was his favorite question. Should Stefanski be the play caller going into 2023?
Well,
has it hurt the Browns or helped them more, would you say? 2 questions.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that he should hand it off because I think he loses sight of the entire game.
Yep.
I think he's stuck into that play sheet and, he never talks to the defense. He never talks to the special teams. He's just wrapped up in his next play. However, I understand now with Watson coming on board for the full season. There's no way he's giving it up now.
Right.
He doesn't want anybody to screw that. Yeah. I understand that, but for 3 years, I think he's an offensive coordinator. He's not a head coach.
Tony
hasn't been a head.
Tony.
Go ahead.
Tony, listen to me. Let me ask you a question.
Here we go.
Let me put you in this shoe. If you knew that your career ride or die with this season, would you put somebody else in charge to call the plays?
You mean now? No, now, but I would have done it by now because what's going to dictate his career are wins and losses. And it wasn't working the last 2 years. They are Tyvis, when's the last time they executed a 2-minute drill down and went down the field and won the game?
I tell you, Baker Mayfield did it against Cincinnati in the fourth quarter.
That's right.
And
2 years ago, right?
he hit DPJ on the back shoulder fade for the game-winning touchdown.
I was going to say Jacoby Brissett against Tampa Bay, but
that's a good one too.
It's very rare. They're bad at it. They're bad at situational football, and I think it's because he's wrapped up in every play, and he's got pretty good assistant coaches. Everyone says AVP, Alex Van Pelt should be the play caller. Baloney. I think Callahan should be the play caller, who's old school and got more experience than any of them. But listen, I understand now. Now that Watson, there's no way Stefanski is going to step back and let someone else mold him to their offense. So now it's too late to give it up. Is my point. He's got to call the play.
Yeah, you got a point. Yeah, I'm not mad at it. My job is on the.
See, I knew this was a great idea for Grossi to come on. I just knew it.
My job is on the line. I gotta go with it. Like, why would I leave my job fake in somebody? It's like Dallas.
Well,
Mike McCarthy probably gonna call plays.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you two examples, and I'm sure the fans have thrown this at you. Brian Daboll was hired because he was a great offensive coordinator. First thing he did was, I'm not calling plays. I'm hiring a coordinator to do it. I'm being the head coach on Sunday. Nick Sirianni, after his first year, said, I'm not calling plays anymore. They went to the Super Bowl. He talked about how, we need a big kickoff return at a certain part of the game. So he goes over and talks to the special teams coach, not the coach, the players. Come on, he rallies them up, fires them up. Or the defense is sluggish out there. Chew them out. I think that's the job of the head coach, to manage the entire team on Sundays. I don't see it out of Stefanski, but
I'm about to say, do you think he's that type of guy to really chew somebody out?
No. Unfortunately, he's not, but you have to be that way to be a head coach. It's a tough job. There's so many decisions and things you got to be responsible for. When Belichick started with the Browns, I didn't think he was a great communicator, but that's one of the best things he does on game days is communicate to his players. So it's an essential part of the job, and I think that's where he's lacking.
All right, Tony.
Yeah, there's a sense of command. No, there's a sense of command that you need and the focus. And I'm with you, Tony. This is something that Tyvis and I have gone back and forth about a lot because the Browns obviously had other issues, especially going on last year, that I think he could have been a bigger focus as a head coach.
Well, I didn't want to get in the middle of this rift you guys got going.
No.
There's no rift. I'm not giving up the play calling on the year. Maybe you could have said that last year for sure.
Yeah, last year.
This year, there's absolutely no way I'm giving up the play calling.
I agree with you there.
If I'm going out calling the play.
I understand that. And plus he's got, now Schwartz has been a head coach. They've got three head coaches. They got the head coach of the offense, the head coach of the defense, and the head coach of the special teams. And I don't know if that works, but let's see it. Let's see what Schwartz and
Bubba. So let me ask you, if you could go back in the time, let me ask you this. You go back in the time. Let's go back to 2020. Do you hire Stefanski or do you hire McDaniels?
Oh, I didn't want McDaniels at all. I was okay. It was that was DePodesta's. It's the second time he brought Stefanski forth, and I wouldn't have hired McDaniels. So I was not unhappy about that at all. I don't know who the other contenders were. I don't even remember, but it looked brilliant, right? In 2020, it looked like the
coach of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't.
2020 was different. I mean, COVID hit. Yeah. Players was locked in. I think that's what it is. He got to find a way to give. To me, I think it's all leadership. You gotta get a culture. You got to lay the foundation. You got to understand that any guy that comes to this organization has to understand this is how we do things here. And you got to have a group of leaders that's going out there that's enforcing what's going on. Listen, we watching extra tape. We spending time after practice making sure that things is down. Yeah, you can, like I say, as a head coach, he's supposed to be the one that said that. I don't know if it's there or not. I feel like he says it. I don't know if he enforces it. And that's the problem right there.
Yeah, there's too many things that were going on last year that kind of suggest they weren't listening to him, right?
Yeah.
Jadeveon Clowney, Winfrey,
Mhm.
defense. That's why I think that's part of the culture, and that's where the coach has to put his foot down and say, we're not putting up with this. And so now you got Winfrey who's messing up again, and he's still on the team. So,
That's what I'm saying. Like it ain't there's no body on that defense that I think. Like you would think it would be Myles Garrett who be the guy that step up. This is how we do. But that's not who. I don't think he's like that. I don't think that's his personality.
Right.
And you got to find a guy that comes in there that's like that sets the tone and makes everybody fall in line. Well, and that's how you will stop these young guys from doing things like that.
See, and that's where I think they fell short in this free agent season. Sheldon Richardson was a guy who could keep Myles.
Yeah, I played with Sheldon in Seattle.
Everyone loved him. Olivier Vernon was another one. So that's why I thought they had to get one of these two tackles, Fletcher Cox or Calais Campbell, who have immense respect, have accomplished everything in the NFL, and they didn't get it done. They didn't bring those guys in. One of those guys in. I think they need someone to show Myles the way, and I think that's what you're saying too. If he's your leader on defense, you're going to be lacking. He's a great player, but he's not that guy.
Well, with the draft coming up, Tony, I mean, obviously we got 2 third-round picks. What is how do you want them to address him?
Well, my expectations are very low for this draft. If they get one player like Emerson, and not a cornerback, but a guy who contributes like he did as a rookie.
Third round. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's almost the most you can hope for is to get one guy drafting so low. But I think they got to go defensive line with both of those third round picks, an end or 2 ends or an end and a tackle. I don't think they're done at free agency yet, too. There's a couple guys. Frank Clark is out there. I mean,
talk about it, Tony.
He should be signed by now. Maybe he will be after the draft. But they don't have a third end. Alex Wright, bless them, Isaiah Thomas, they didn't have a sack as rookies, and they had a lot of snaps out there, as it turned out. And in 007, 5 career sacks. I mean, come on. You think that guy's going to turn into a double-digit sack guy? So that's my biggest concern about what Barry did in the offseason. He didn't fortify that front enough.
Speaking of Barry, go ahead, Tyvis.
You okay with the linebackers right now? Because because you got all of them, the whole Walker, JOK, Taki, all coming off of injuries. You're okay with that? Just roll it out there.
I guess they're not going to spend big money on a linebacker. They're never going to draft a linebacker in the first round. It's just the way they are. They copy everything the Eagles do, and the Eagles don't do it, and they have a great defense. So they figure they can get away with that. I would love to see a monster linebacker on this team. Roquan Smith, a guy that can just be fearful out there. But that's not the way they run their defense. And I kind of understand it. But yeah, the linebackers let them down with those injuries a lot last year.
Barry, since we're talking about the draft now, Tony, do you think that there might be more news or more excitement around maybe Barry making moves? You wrote about on the Lane on Demand that he has made 7 trades during the 3 days of the draft in just 3 years that he's been here, which is not including obviously the pre-draft deals. But I mean, could that be a bigger story? Do you anticipate any?
Yeah, I do. He'll trade. He'll make 2 trades. My point of my story was most of those trades are not aging well on those draft day trades. Tyvis, who would you rather have, JOK or Nick Bolton?
Well, come on now, really?
Okay.
Really?
I mean, you can make all the trades you want, but it still comes down to who you select with your pick, and that's where they've been lacking. Even Andrew Barry is I like Andrew a lot, and he does a lot of good things, but they've missed on players, and everybody does. Okay, that's the excuse. Nobody gets it right. Well, you got to get it right more times than you get it wrong in order to catch up to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's made a ton of good decisions in the last 3 years. It's not all Joe Burrow, and if you're not making good decisions, getting all those extra picks are fine on draft day, but when it comes time to your pick, and you're letting a guy like Nick Bolton go, and he's good enough to be the second best defensive player on the Super Bowl champions his first 2 years in the league, you have missed it. You've blown it.
Yeah.
They have to stop doing
that. But who's in charge of this?
Who's in charge? Great question.
It's interesting because you got to watch the tape to be like, okay, I see his talent. It's going to translate. If he comes here, we're going to put him in this scheme. It'll translate well. He'll be able to make plays. How is it, especially on the defensive line, because I feel like we draft a defensive lineman every single draft. How is it that we cannot get that right? Who is in charge? What tape are they watching? What's going on?
Listen, anyone who listens to me knows that I'm anti-analytics. I think they rely too much on figures, on numbers. The JOK pick was strictly, this guy's fast. He's versatile. We could play him anywhere. But he comes to the NFL and you don't know where to play him. He doesn't make plays like he did at Notre Dame. I think the defensive line, they get guys in their whatever they call them, their guidelines or whatever they call those things, the parameters that the analytics crew sets up, and that's who they draft from. And that's the flaw, I think, in the personnel evaluation with this team, where other teams that are more traditional are drafting rings around them, and that includes Cincinnati, who gets a bad rap. Believe me, they're doing a lot of right things, especially on defense.
Well, yeah, there should be a lot around that fit, right? That feeling that of being out there and seeing what works. I mean, I saw Jake Trotter, who another fellow teammate of ours, but ESPN Browns reporter, he said that the Browns can finally afford to prioritize talent over fit. Would you agree with that?
Well, they should always prioritize talent.
Yeah, but can afford to, right? And he's saying they finally can this year. Would you agree with that?
I don't know what that means. Why this year? Well, I don't know what he means. Because they don't have a glaring need anywhere, and so you could pick the best player
talent over the fit.
Yeah. I don't know. I think best player is always a myth. Every team pretty much drafts for needs, right? Unless you're in the top 10 and everybody drafts for need. Why is Will Levis now being considered in the top? My gosh, that's ridiculous. I think they need to look at game film more than just their analytics and metric charts. And really, they draft according to formula rather than the guys who test the best, the guys who run the fastest, the guys who jump the highest, instead of just looking at who's the best football player. Mm-hmm. That's my biggest qualm about this regime, And the other thing is, here's the other thing, and Tyvis, you won't like this because you were a defensive back, right?
Yeah.
They
oh man, here we go.
Listen to this. For the 3 previous years, and this comes from analytics, that they believe the best pass defense starts in the secondary.
That's a fact, Tony.
Now, that's why you said they draft these defensive linemen, but they don't really draft them until the middle rounds. Okay, Jordan Elliott and Hoagie and all these guys, and the guy last year, Winfrey. They have never devoted a first-round pick to a defensive lineman since Myles Garrett. They've been worried about the secondary. Okay, Schwartz comes in, and Schwartz says, his introductory press conference, he says, hey, the best pass defense is rushing the passer. And to me, it was a dramatic shift now in what the Browns will do. With the hiring of Schwartz, it's like we gotta put our emphasis up front, not in the back. I mean, they devote so much money to their secondary, and what happens all year long? You see guys raising their arms. I thought you had them. Where are you going? Those guys get burned. I don't care. They're all first, second, and third round picks, and they didn't even face the best quarterbacks in the league. Look who they faced: Flacco, the New Orleans guy, Andy Dalton,
Bailey Zappi.
Yes. So I believe that's one of the reasons I loved the hiring of Schwartz, because the emphasis will be put up front in the pass rush. I just don't think they got him enough horses this first year.
Well, it's definitely in the coverage. It's definitely in the coverage, Tony, because that's how you get the sacks. You know, if the quarterback got a pump fake and go to his next read, that's time for that rush to get there. So that's why we get paid. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, now I need you to go ahead and look for about 2 seasons. Will the Browns be happy or sad with the Deshaun Watson trade?
Who could tell? I hope they're happy. I hope he returns to form. Really, it'd make our jobs so much more fun.
What if they don't?
Don't say that, Holly.
Well, that's a real thing.
Putting it out.
I mean,
don't even put it.
But
in
what
universe.
if they don't? And
I think Rizzo asked me this question in a different form 5 days a week.
You know what it is? I know. I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. Kevin is fired. Andrew's fired. Everybody on this coach in the office is fired. Because you got to fire somebody who's justifiable. It's like, for example, John Lynch. I mean, not John Lynch. What's his name? John Elway is not now. He's not the GM for the Broncos anymore because he decided to trade 2 first-round picks and some other stuff for Russell Wilson, who didn't get the job done. So somebody got to get fired. That's the number. What I'm saying is, if you mortgage your future and it don't work, somebody's getting fired.
Yeah, but there's a question of who made the call on Watson. I maintain it was the owner, and they just said, "Okay, boss, we'll do it." But yeah, someone's going to take the fall. There's no doubt. It's not going to be Watson. I mean, they can't get out of that kind of.
No, they can't. It's over with.
Years. Yeah. So hopefully we won't see that, because that will just ridiculous. They'll never get a stadium built if that happens.
No, I will not. Tony, we like to ask all of our guests in every week predictions. So what is your season prediction for the 2023 Browns? Right now, what they got?
Yeah. Well, usually I say, let's wait till the draft, but in this case, it's not going to matter. They're not going to bring in any difference makers in this year's draft. I think they've improved. I'm just a little hesitant about the defensive line. I don't think they did enough there. So what I like is that they play Cincy and Baltimore really well. I mean, that's one thing about Woods. He somehow figured out how to play them defensively, and they've done a good job there, and that's important. Right now I say 9-8. Now they got to be better than that to make the playoffs.
Ooh, yeah.
But I'm skeptical about what the ceiling is for Watson playing in the AFC North. I really can't figure it out. I don't think it's as high as playing where he came from, but listen, they could have made the playoffs the last 2 years, and so they're right there. They're there. They just got to close that gap.
If they go 9-8, is Stefanski getting fired?
I don't think so. I
don't?
No,
even 9-8.
Yeah, even if it's out of the playoffs, I think it's important he wins more than he loses. And I think Pete Podesta is going to have the biggest voice in that decision, and I think he wants to see it through. Whether or not he can talk the owner off the ledge, we'll see. But I think he's the buffer. He's the best friend that Barry and Stefanski have in that building. So I think 9-8. I wouldn't fire him after 9-8. I wouldn't.
Would you fire him if he went? Well, would that be your threshold?
8-9 is close. It's,
I 8. Oof.
yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
three. That's 3 losing years in a row.
That's what.
Yeah, that's
What did
it's
we
not
go
just this
this
past
year?
year.
Yeah,
What was our record this year? 7-10
7
or
and
8-9?
10. 7 and 10.
Oh,
It was 8-9 the year before. So yeah, I don't even want to think. I hate that question, Holly. I don't want to even ponder that because the worst thing about my job in my career, the worst story in a pro football writer's life is the coaching search story. I hate that story. I hate that story. I hate that. So I don't want to go through another one.
Yeah. Well, we don't either. So let's hope that we don't have to think about it at a 9-8 situation or 8-9. Well, Tony, thank you so much for talking Browns with us, your career, your favorite things.
I don't think you got too personal. I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Well, to end things, I was going to ask you about Baker.
Holly, you asked me something before, and I wanted to bring this up because you were with us in the press box in Carolina, opener and against the Panthers, and you saw my act. The only way I get through these games, if you sat next to me during these games, I'm a wisecracking SOB. I have to release that. Otherwise, I'm so frustrated from what I see. And they were winning that game, all day long until it got hairy there in the fourth quarter. But a typical Browns game, if you sit next to me, ask Trotter this sometimes because he always sits next to me at home and mostly on the road. I have to release all this sarcasm. Otherwise, it comes out in the post game. And it's crazy. It's the only thing that keeps me sane when I see Stefanski throwing the ball into the end zone from 30 yards out instead of possessing the ball for 2 minutes. That's a big complaint I have for him, about him, is that he doesn't manage the game. He's got possession. He's got a great offensive line. He's got Chubb. And he's thrown in the end zone. Why? So you could give the quarterback the ball with a minute and a half and lose the game that way?
Yes.
Those are the things that I hate when I see that happening. Grind the ball out, possess it, and score. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I know. That was fascinating sitting in that press box with you guys. I was filming all kinds of stuff I shouldn't have been, but I don't care because it was really, really cool to listen to you guys watching back and forth. And when that hit that field goal, man, and then at the end, it's like, wow. And then Riz goes, but there's still 8 seconds left. that was like the end. And that was exact what it was.
You gotta watch the game with me, Tony. I'm so emotional. I'm so emotionless during the game.
Emotionless?
Sitting there like,
oh, really?
Yeah, I'm emotionless.
Except you're texting me on the side with emotion.
No, I got a couple. I got a couple thoughts, but like when I'm watching it, like I don't. The only time I get upset is when a DB drops an interception. That one gets me every time. I can't stand it.
There's a lot of that. Why? Let me ask you this: why do you think Greg Newsome has no interceptions in 2 years?
Great question.
Well, it's very interesting that you asked that. He played nickel this season, so that was different for him. They run a lot of cover 3, so his eyes is on the quarterback. He had to get the feeling for it. I didn't think he started getting the feeling for nickel until the Texans game. I thought that was the one where he started breaking on the ball and stuff, and he started to truly understand it. That nickel position, you got to be quicker. That you got to be on it. Like it's a snap thing, and he just didn't have it early on. I would expect for him to get one this season, but usually when he's playing man, if you're getting beat off the line and you playing catch up, you're taught not to look back for the ball until you're in the hand-hit relationship. And a lot of times he's getting beat on that release and he's playing catch up. If he wants to truly make plays, the best way to do it is to he has to switch up his technique a little bit. He has to bail sometimes, but that comes with situational awareness. You know, if it's 2nd and 7 or something like that, that's a waist down for a guy. 2nd and 5, it's a waist down. So bail on the snap because they might hit you with a fade. You line up and press. The quarterback's gonna look out there, see you press. They're gonna check fade right there. But if you bail on it, you're on top of the route. He throws the fade. You on top of the route. You can see the ball come out the quarterback's hand. You can play the ball. Those are just certain things that, I learned. Obviously they need to teach them something. Maybe I need to go up in the DB room one time. And, you got to play the game. You got to play the game within the game. You know, so it's just for him. It's just about him getting his eyes on the quarterback to be able to see the ball. But you got to win the route. You got to win off the line to be in control of the route.
It just seems to me the best games the Browns defense has had the last 3 years. The safeties always had big games, and the corners played a lot of press. They did that against Cincinnati in the games they've won. They beat up Jamar Chase as a rookie like nobody else has ever done. And they were in his face. They caused drops. They had tip balls turn into interceptions. And it just seems they play off man so much. And that just bothers me so much because these guys they're the highest paid, they're the highest drafted players on defense, and they're playing off so much. Is criticism of yours?
I'm not a fan of off man because off man is to play off man and be truly effective of it, you have to understand quarterback drops. So for example, if I'm playing off, my first 3 reads, my read steps, I'm looking at the quarterback. I'm not even looking at the wide receiver. You get your first read from the quarterback because if it's quick game, he's going to snap up with the ball right now. So you stop your pedal and you break right now because the ball is coming out. So you got to make sure that you got to let the quarterback pass 3 steps. When he turned it into a 5-step drop, boom, now you got to get your eyes back on your wide receiver, and you got to be able to understand route combinations. So if number 2, because usually it's 2 by 2, if number 2 is running, I don't know, if he's running a drag, then it's a dig behind it. You got to understand, like, if he's running a seam route, then the number 1's running a comeback. Like, those are the things that you got to know if you're playing off man. And a lot of people don't take the time out to understand route concepts like that. So that's why I just rather play press man to man, because I honestly press, if you line up and press, if he goes outside, you pretty much getting the out or fade, or you getting the freaking comeback. If he goes inside, release on the inside, you getting a dig, because you usually running a cover 3 shell. So digs is usually the number 1 thing, or you getting some inward breaking route. And like I said, it's a simple game, but people make it more difficult than what it really is.
Well, we've got Holly totally bored now. We better
what? No, I love what?
Inside Scoop NFL.
I had to mute myself because I had a sneeze coming on and I could feel it, and I was like looking at you guys and I was listening, and then I was trying to look at the light because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to look at the light. But no, actually, I tell Tyvis all the time that I love when he gets into these kind of modes because he thinks a completely different way, right? And I think that that's what's so cool. Him and I think very differently, obviously, on certain things, but it's neat to hear him break down. I had him break down once when he first was on, just like what do quarterbacks do when they first come in. They first come into the game, and every single mark that they're making and trying to observe and everything that goes along with that. I think it's when you play, it's a completely different viewpoint, obviously, and a different experience, and you have a different way of approaching the game and how you break it down. So
that's why he's so emotionless watching a game.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's one of those things that you see failure happen. It's just like I'm numb to it. I'm numb to certain things. It doesn't bother me because some of the mistakes that happen, I understand why they made that mistake. So I've been in that situation, so I understand what they were thinking and why that happens. It's just, it comes with knowledge. It comes with repetition.
Well, yeah, it comes with
it's like watching your kids grow. It's like my kids do something, I'm not frustrated because they're young. They're still trying to figure it out. Now they get 16, 17 years old, they still making those mistakes. I failed as a parent.
No, you never fail.
Well, you make the case that they could stand to have a veteran cornerback on this team, a guy who's been through.
My knees ain't good enough.
Not you,
man.
Tony. Not
I
you.
wish. My knee ain't good enough no more. That's the thing though. They got great corners. Like Denzel is a good corner. Obviously, I'm a little biased because he's a Buckeye and I played with him, but that's neither here nor there. Denzel is a great corner. When he's locked in and he's
When he's
healthy, he's
locked
as good as
in.
anybody. He's locked in and he's healthy. He's as good as anybody in the league. My only knock on Denzel is that he don't always get interceptions. He's one of those corners that's become used to playing through the hands. And nothing's wrong with that. However, you need interceptions to make it to the Hall of Fame. Like, you ever wonder why back in the day where they ran the ball majority of the game, those people that's like DBs in the Hall of Fame got 50+ picks? Like that's Darrelle Revis is like the first corner with like under 50 picks and that got nominated to go to the Hall of Fame. So it's like, how is it that our ball skills as a secondary has failed so much that we can't get our hands on the ball anymore? That makes absolutely no sense.
Exactly. The 10 interceptions is like a mountain nowadays. That used to be the yearly leader in the NFL would have 10 interceptions. They're throwing the ball 60% more than ever, and 5 interceptions lead the league. Anymore. And Newsom, I keep picking on him, but he had 1 interception at Northwestern and 0 here. He's had 1 interception in 5 years of the highest level. I don't understand it. That's his one job.
And he does not want to be traded, by the way. He does not want to be traded.
But
I know, I'm just kidding. You made that clear.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, going to be an interesting year. Tony, thanks so much for your breakdown and analysis and fun stories and frustrations. We would love to have you back on, and maybe we should all watch a game together in the press box this year.
Oh, that would be great content.
I'm invited.
Oh yeah,
of course.
You won't be quiet if you're watching with us.
You're going to bring your emotion. Bring your emotion.
I'm a literally sit there and just laugh. I'm gonna sit there and just laugh.
You probably would. Yeah.
You know what I would do? I would break down what happened. That's what I would do. Like, this is why. That's what I used to do when I watched it at the Brownsville League with Connor. We used to sit there and I used to be like, "This is why this happened." And I would draw up the adjustment that they need to make sure that it don't happen. It was actually fascinating.
I'd like to see that. But,
yeah.
I can't be as quiet as you because I've been doing it too long. I'm running out of years, Holly. I'm running out of years.
Well, Tyvis is let him. He's fresh on the scene. You know, he's doe-eyed and excited and very optimistic.
I like to see
stick around a little bit longer.
You got to see the positive in things, Tony. Everything isn't always as bad as they make it seem. You know, it's positives in every situation.
He's too new. He's too fresh, Tony. He's too fresh.
Just telling you, it's the truth.
Yeah, well, I used to be like that 30 years ago.
Wait, just wait.
I've got scars in the back of my neck. No, but yeah, I'm looking forward. I start every year, believe me, optimistic.
You have to do what you do. I can only imagine, right? You have to be able to shake it off.
And usually by the first half of the second game, I'm my old self again. Like
as soon as you make it to the second game, usually the first game.
Yeah. Well, that's the first one they won in 20 years.
True.
So anyway,
home is the first game home this year.
We don't know yet. Next month.
They got to be due for that, though, right?
It's in May now. They wait till after the draft, and then they try to draw up the best matchups with the rookies.
Everything is a big to-do.
Yeah. So that's the next big event after the draft. The schedule release has become one of the biggest events of the year. But I think it's going to be interesting this year because Stefanski wants to have, they got 2 West Coast trips. They got 2 in the mountain range, like Denver and Houston.
Mm-hmm.
He wants them back to back so he could spend keep the team out west, play LA and Seattle. So that's what he'll be looking for. That's what he'll be looking for when they release the schedule, whether he gets his wish or not.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cross your fingers. Okay. All right, Tony, it has been an honor. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I'll do it again anytime.
Thank you, Tony. We really appreciate that.
We do. This is a big deal for us. So
we'll see you
you in the office tomorrow?
No. Oh, no. I have a lunch date though with business day. I don't think I'll be in the office. Hopefully.
Oh.
So anyway,
Well, we need to do lunch again sometime, Tony. Tony and I did lunch.
absolutely, yeah.
I don't know, a couple months ago. So maybe we can bring Tyvis too.
She's a smooth operator.
All right, that does.
Good luck with your podcast. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
All right, that is it for us in the Orange is Oranger. I'm Holly Wetzel. He is Tyvis Powell. He is Taj, our producer. And Tyvis, why don't you take us out?
Go Browns, baby. Tony Grossi with us.
Tony Grossi.
He down with the dog.
He's
pound.
already gone. All right.